2 bikepacking trips here on GCN in 2018. First, we did a 4-day trip through the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, and then a 2-day epic gravel trip through Iceland. But we want to do more, and I expect you do too. So here is how to plan your next adventure. For me, the best bit of planning is actually getting inspired. So the daydreaming, the research, the whole world is at your fingertips. You don't need to go out and buy paper maps, although they are blooming cool. Everything can be found online. I'm not sure we can tell you exactly how to get inspired, but videos, great place to start. Instagram, fantastic source of inspiration, and websites generally as well. For this video, we are going to have a bit of a hypothetical 2019 trip going on, and our source of inspiration is a gravel road through central Patagonia. I have actually been down it many years ago, but not on a bike. So in 2019, I want to rectify that. So we have our inspiration then, we know roughly where we're going to go. The next point is to deal with a couple of practical issues. The first thing to consider is actually how much time you have available for your trip. So the longer you have, the further afield you can go, because you do need to factor in how much time it's going to take to get to the start of your adventure versus how much time you're actually going to have for your adventuring. So for example, our hypothetical Patagonian trip, we're going to need to give ourselves quite a bit of time, a couple of weeks at least, because it's a long way from home and it takes a long time to get there and get home again. The next thing to think about is your budget. So the great news is that bikepacking, it can be pretty cheap. Certainly if you set out from home, all you really need is a bike and a bit of luggage. Venture further afield and you're going to need to factor in your travel costs, but you can also bear in mind that the cost of living might be different at your destination as well. So potentially you might have to spend more on flights, but you can actually save on food and accommodation when you arrive. For our hypothetical trip, flights are going to be quite costly, and the actual cost of living is going to be broadly similar, perhaps a little bit cheaper, but it's going to mean that we're having to brace ourselves for quite an expensive trip. So you've got your destination, you've got your time, you've got your money. The next bit is another particularly good bit, the actual route planning. Google Maps is a good place to start, particularly if Street View is available for the area that you're looking at. And it is in a surprising number of places. It will give you a great idea of what to expect, frankly. So everything from the scenery to the road quality, traffic levels, climate even. If we look at our hypothetical road, we can see that, actually it's not a hypothetical road, it's a real road on our hypothetical trip. Anyway, it's still gravel, which is excellent news. Not a car in sight, and the weather looks every bit as bad as I remembered, judging from the fact that there's a temperate rainforest and there's a lot of snow knocking around the place. Once you've got a rough idea of the roads to ride, the next step on would be to use a dedicated route planning app. Now, there are loads out there. For both of the GCN trips this year, we've used Komoot, which is an outdoor sports specific app. It's actually the one I use whenever I'm planning a route, but it is particularly good for being able to sniff out off-road options like gravel as well as on-road options. And it does that in 2 different ways. First, it uses open street maps, which I've learned is like the Wikipedia of mapping, in that anyone can contribute to it, meaning that you could add new tracks that you find or take away lost ones. Komoot then adds its own map over the top with elevation data on there, and it's also got a way of working out what the road surface is going to be. So particularly useful for if you're planning a road bikepacking trip and you find that there's a whole chunk of gravel on there. So in this case, in fact, it's mostly unpaved. As well as the maps, satellite imagery can also prove invaluable. Certainly when we were planning for Morocco, we spent a long time scouring the images for details of our mystery gravel section to try and work out whether or not it was going to be passable using the equipment that we had. Speaking of Morocco, actually, our bikepacking guru, Josh Ibert, has a golden rule, which is that the shorter your trip, the more you should plan to make sure you actually get the absolute most out of it. Now, once you're happy with your route, the final point to say is that you then need to work out how you're going to follow it. So you could simply do it using your phone, or in this case, I can sync it up directly with my Wahoo, which is great. I get turn-by-turn directions. You probably want some kind of paper map as a backup if you're going really off the beaten track, that I would have thought. Now, it's all very well saying plan your route, but bikepacking trips can, of course, take on different formats. You could do a point-to-point ride where you fly into one city and then maybe fly out of another one, or you can base yourself in one spot and then do a loop, which is what we did in Morocco. Now, that meant that it was easy logistically. We could stash our bike bags in Marrakesh, and it also meant that we could make more of the short time we had available. We effectively got to spend longer in our saddles. Now, when you're looking into the nitty-gritty of the route, you're going to want to factor in your ability. That's going to affect your daily mileage, how many days you have available for it, and the terrain that you're going to be covering. You can see on this route, on the elevation profile, there's a couple of pretty big mountains to go over. Now, I would personally err on the side of caution. Less may well be more in this case, because I would imagine for most of you, it's going to be a holiday. So you're not going to be wanting to stress out about missing your return flight or having to pass up opportunities to explore or relax, maybe have a longer than normal lunch stop. If you're planning on staying in hard accommodation, so where you have a roof over your head, then you're probably going to want to plan your schedule a little more closely, because you're going to need to factor in whether or not your daily mileage is actually going to tally up with the accommodation options that are available to you. If you go a little bit more self-sufficient, so camping, then you will be able to be more flexible, of course, but you still need to factor in where you're going to be able to stock up on the essentials like your food and your water. Now you have planned your bikepacking trip in its entirety. I have it on good authority that it probably won't go to plan. Yes, I mean, it is hard to factor in things like the weather, mechanical problems, illness, injury, maybe even something as simple as a closed road. And so it's important to retain a degree of flexibility in there. It is an adventure, after all, so things can and will change. But you can also mitigate those risks by building in some contingency. So for example, your route, you could make a copy of it and then create a shorter plan B, maybe take out the mountain passes for a plan C for if the weather closes in. You should also take note, however briefly, of where hospitals are. Remember to tell your friends and family where you're going so that someone knows where to come looking for you. Now, all of those things will add up to help make your bikepacking trip fun, relaxing, and perhaps most importantly, safe as well. And those factors definitely become more and more important the further off the beaten track you become. So that is how you plan your next bikepacking adventure. Please let us know in the comments section where you want to go next. And hey, if enough people are clamoring for Patagonia, maybe we'll get to go there. Give that one a big thumbs up, please. Anyway, talked a little bit in this video about those trips to Morocco and also Iceland. If you haven't seen either of those videos, click on screen now.